Gumption, defined as initiative, aggressiveness, resourcefulness, courage, spunk, guts, common sense, and shrewdness. Welcome to the podcast. This is Stories of Gumption with your host, Ryan Lee. All right. The first ever Stories of Gumption podcast. I'm super pumped about this. Excited about this project and hopefully add some value to your life. Today, I have Jason Conde, an incredibly impressive dude and a great friend of mine. We could talk all day about examples of this guy's gumption. I mean, starting businesses, doing all these sorts of different projects. This guy's impressive. Today, however, I want to focus on how Jay conquered his fear of public speaking and, in my opinion, became incredibly good at building connections with people. It's a life skill that applies to all industries. Hopefully you take something from it and maybe even can apply it, some of the lessons and stuff we talk about, to your own fears. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the first ever Stories of Gumption podcast, my good friend, Jay Conde.
What's up, buddy?
Hey, man.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really pumped about this, and I know there's a lot of podcasts out there, but just having some fun with this. And
I'm happy to be here, man.
Yeah. And,
cheers.
Cheers.
Let's do this, man.
Yeah, so, like I said in the intro, I think you're really good at connecting with people.
Power to the people.
I think this is a skill that will definitely benefit you in business and life, and it wasn't always that way, though. You didn't naturally find it easy to public speak or connect with people. Tell me about that.
Yeah, man. I think it's a common struggle that a lot of us share. I think public speaking is right up there as one of the top three most feared things in the...
Yeah, the data I've seen is public speaking is like ranked number one, or at least...
Is that for the U.S. or the world?
U.S. is what I saw, but I mean, that's serious.
Yeah,
so
man.
What we're about to talk about, it may sound cheesy, but I mean, for me, I get anxiety talking in front of people or networking or whatever.
It's all under the umbrella of anxiety. And for me, it started, I don't know if it was innate. I don't know, if it was a certain experience, but one that always comes to mind was, and I know it's going to sound crazy, but way back in preschool, I was about 4, and this was traumatic for me. We were having our annual Christmas concert, and we all had to wear cute little reindeer antlers.
Of course.
And I was up on stage performing, stealing the show, but my reindeer antlers fell down over my eyes in front of everybody, and all the parents were laughing, and I ran off stage crying. I was mortified.
Oh my God.
And I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but that I do remember.
As a 4-year-old, your whole life is just scarred.
Yeah, man. There's a lot going on in our little minds at that time, but yeah, my fear of public speaking and social anxiety that continued all throughout grade school, middle school, high school, and basically, I think for all of us, it's just really hard to speak in front of people because, you're very vulnerable. And it was also, I think, somewhat a fear of being wrong, getting called on in class or giving a presentation and just stumbling on my words or drawing a blank. But, it was really hard, man. Every day I was just terrified, to have to speak in front of the class.
As most people are.
Yeah. I think it's very common. But in college, obviously, we were roommates. And I think when I met you, that did a lot for my confidence. Just you always encouraging me, being there for me as a friend. I think
the people you choose to surround yourself with,
that's everything, man.
Know,
everything. They
diffusion of energy or osmosis.
Because the people that you surround yourself with enable you to become the best version of yourself. And
Amen.
They'll both, push you and support you, and you did just that. So college, I was able to, gain a little confidence in myself. It was still really hard. Like, it was really hard to give presentations. I had to overcompensate and really, really prepare. And, so
I remember that. I remember seeing the anxiety just grow in you the day before a presentation, because it was genuinely something you hated to do.
Yeah, man, it's debilitating.
Yeah.
But anyways, I wanted to work with kids, so I went to school to be a teacher. In grad school, I had to do a lot of field work in schools around the Albany area, and I did a lot of work at charter schools. And I stumbled upon this unique opportunity where I was actually working with my aunt at the time. She is
okay.
I think she's one of the best teachers in the world. And she, the first grade team of teachers, they were looking for a volunteer to dress up as an astronaut and help introduce this unit on the solar system to these first graders. So, I thought it sounded awesome.
Yeah.
And I was like, sign me up, I'll do it. Let's do it. So the day that the day of the presentation, I'm all amped up.
Yep.
So I text my aunt and I'm like, where am I meeting you?
Yeah. Which classroom?
Yeah. She says the auditorium. And I'm like, what do you mean? I thought I was doing this for one class. She's like, nope, we decided the whole first grade is actually gonna be there. So my heart dropped. I was like, it's on. This is real.
Yeah.
This is happening.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, and the third grade might join too. So, it was game time, man. And
that was probably the biggest group of people you'd ever had to speak in front of.
Yeah. It ended up being close to 100 kids. And
you weren't able to prepare for, which prior to that, always prepared to the.
Yeah, I mean, I had a PowerPoint and everything, but I remember I had to get changed in the bathroom, putting on this astronaut suit, and I just thought about these wide-eyed kids who were, basically looking at me like I was some superhero. And, I had to step up, and I didn't really think about my fear because I had to do it for them. They were expecting me to come in as this fearless astronaut.
To them, you were a real astronaut, and they had expectations.
Yeah, man. I had to lie to the kids, but that's not the point.
That's not the point of the story.
I had to hop into a cold shower, man, and it was uncomfortable. But again, I wasn't thinking about myself. I had to do it for these wide-eyed kids and step up to the plate, and I did just that, man. I killed it, and I went on to do it for 4 years in a row. Like I was known as Astronaut Jason at this charter school, and I would come into this. I would come into I Believe I Can Fly, and I would give kids high fives and stuff, and it was awesome. It was so much fun. But that moment, the first time I did it, was a big step for me, man. That gave me a lot of confidence in myself in overcoming that social anxiety. I mean, even though it sounds kind of crazy, speaking in front of 100 first graders. These kids are 6 years old, but still, man, they're people just like us.
with expectations.
Exactly.
And if for someone with a phobia of speaking in front of people,
yeah,
it doesn't matter how old they are, you're wondering what they think about it.
Exactly.
And I think most people, and at least for me, when I would do public speaking for various jobs or nonprofits I've been involved with, that never goes away.
No,
but I think
it never goes away. You learn to cope, and
I think it's a measure of you caring. If you didn't care about the result and you didn't want it to be great, then the anxiety probably wouldn't really be there.
Yeah, and it's also a measure of growth, I think, and expanding your comfort zone. Because after that astronaut experience, I went on to give a speech at your wedding as your best man.
That was quite a lot more people than 100 first graders.
Yeah, yeah.
That was closer to 160 or something crazy.
Something like that. And then I gave a speech at my buddy Evan's wedding. I was the best man there.
That one was bigger from what you told me.
Yeah, it was like 200 people, and I killed it both times. Like to be honest, man, I pictured myself as that fearless astronaut.
Yeah.
And you step up to the plate.
Yeah.
And you almost, in a way, you almost look forward to, confronting your fear.
The opportunity to just
crush it.
Yeah.
And be vulnerable. It's like,
so what was the switch in your head? Like what like obviously the astronaut experience was a switch, but like in terms of somebody who might be listening or just us talking, like if you have a phobia, we'll continue with the social phobia.
Yeah.
What for you was the moment that like clicked, or how did you start framing the thought in your head of I've got to speak in front of these people? And tell me about that.
To be honest, man,
self-expression.
I think it all has to do with growth. I never wanted to plateau. If I hadn't confronted my fear of public speaking, I would have just stayed the same, man. And I also went on to perform at open mic poetry night in Troy, and because I've always been into writing.
Yeah.
And man, after the speeches at the weddings, like I walked into this place in Troy, awesome place, man. Shout out to the Troy Kitchen, and
new era of confidence.
Yeah, you. Man. Yeah, you get up there, and there are like 30 to 50 people every Monday night. Dee Collins is the host, and she does an amazing job. She's just an inspiring person. But yeah, so I get up there like once a month, once every couple months, and perform, and like I don't think twice about it, man, because for me, I'm still coming into my own, and it's about poetry. To me, is about self-expression, and I think that's important for all of us to kind of discover who we are, self-discovery.
Yeah.
And because if you never discover who you are, then you never know what you want.
Right.
And I think that's kind of a problem that we have in society today.
Yeah.
With the societal expectation of, going to school, getting a degree, settling down, getting married, and having kids. I think
there's this expectation of I don't want to say conformity, but like kind of an expectation of what success is without taking into account the individual's
man. Listen, in school,
needs, wants, or desires, right? It's like
individuality is lost in school. If you think about it, like how many people really spend time with themselves? Like I think a lot of people are just uncomfortable with the idea of going to a diner and having breakfast by yourself. you have
without
to,
looking at your phone or,
yeah, man.
I don't want to
without-
sound like
without
that guy,
stimulation.
that's like complaining about everybody's complaining about social media,
Yeah,
and all,
but
nobody's willing to change. But
I know,
that's
man.
not what I want to make it about. Like,
Yeah,
I know where you're going with this, though. It's
Yeah.
like this idea of just self-reflection and being in your own mind, mindfulness, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. I think back to the whole school thing. We're not really given an opportunity to discover who we are in school, and that's a big reason why I discontinued. I emphasize that word. I didn't drop out.
Yeah.
I discontinued with my graduate degree because I just I didn't want to be a hypocrite, and because school really didn't resonate with me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big believer in education. You have to educate yourself, and that comes from within.
Yeah.
But school, sitting down in a desk for 7 hours every day, that's hard.
It's very hard.
That's really hard. And who would I be to stand up in front of a classroom and teach these young people subjects that I feel aren't necessarily always applicable in the real world? They're not really teaching us life skills. They're not preparing us for what's to come. So I discontinued with my graduate degree because I didn't necessarily believe in the curriculum. But I did stumble upon another unique opportunity. This whole time, man, I feel like I've just been following my path and trusting that the dots will connect. I ended up coaching at a little league in Albany in the South End.
Yep. We've talked about that.
American Little League. It changed my life, man. So I guess the story as to how that came about is kind of cool. So my dad is a painting contractor.
Yep.
He owns his own business, and he met this guy Joe Varno, who's also another painting contractor, at the paint store one day, and they were shooting the shit, and basically my name came up. My dad said, his son just graduated college, played baseball, and was going to school to be a teacher. And Joe Varno said, well, you know what? I coach at this little league in Albany, and I need some help. Would he be interested? And yeah, man, my dad gave me Joe's number. I called him up. I was super interested, and Joe and I talked for like an hour. We hit it off right off the bat, man. He's just a real cool guy, and he does a lot of work in the community. But the thing that I really wasn't prepared for was the fact that this little league resides in inner city Albany. Like, it's a rough neighborhood, man. It's much different from where I grew up in this small town of Voorheesville, New York. I mean,
different realities for the kids growing up.
Oh, for sure, man. Just at a total disadvantage. But I always wanted to, like I said earlier, expand my comfort zone. Mm-hmm. I wanted to pop the bubble that I grew up in.
Yeah.
I think that's another problem that we face as a society. Like, all of us grow up in these small bubbles.
Yeah.
And very few leave,
especially if you're incredibly disadvantaged. Your opportunity, and again, I more than I do, but from my understanding, your opportunity to leave that bubble, the more disadvantaged you are, is way more difficult.
Yeah, man.
Like, you are the system in which they're growing up in. We're all growing up in, is setting up opportunity and expectation differently.
Yeah. I think honestly, it has to do with a lack of exposure to people that are different from yourself. um, I think that a lot of people feel more comfortable around people that look like them,
Yep.
like yourself, and talk like you, and
Yep.
and all that stuff. Very few people venture out and put themselves in a different environment where you're the minority now.
Yeah.
So at that little league, man, it was predominantly black.
Yep.
And a low socioeconomic status. Like, these kids had it tough. These were 10-year-olds going on 18. And yeah, man, it was a life-changing experience. These kids have all the potential in the world. These are bright young people, and I think I was super naive at the time, which actually helps, I think, in a lot of ways. I think anything that you do in life, man, like, it helps to be naive.
Yeah.
Because you don't think about the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
You're in there happy-go-lucky, roll up your sleeves, like, let's do this thing. And you don't really think about what could go wrong.
Yeah.
But
tell me a story of, like, I mean, a challenge that you faced during that experience.
Every day, man.
And maybe like how that helped you become more self-aware of yourself.
Yep.
And also helped you become even better. Like, I think you're great at connecting with people. Like, tell me a challenge that you experienced.
I have a lot of stories that I could tell, and I'll tell one in a minute here. But
yeah.
I do want to emphasize that, like, man, like, we all breathe the same air. Like, if you go anywhere where people are different from you, like, and you're scared and you're uncomfortable, like, it's gonna show, man. Like, just go in there happy-go-lucky, and just be grateful for the opportunity to meet different people.
Yep.
And there's always a commonality. Like, just in the art of conversation, connecting with people, is just finding that commonality. You don't know what you have in common with somebody if you don't ask.
That's brilliant.
It
sounds simple, but that's brilliant.
Yeah, man. So I was able to really connect with people at the park, and but anyways, so one of the challenges was, okay, so I'm about to get real here, man.
That's fine.
The south end of Albany is so much different, man. It's a different culture. The people are awesome, but they're just different from the way you and I grew up.
Yeah.
We were playing. So
I lived a pretty. I will say this. I lived and I didn't know it at the time, but I lived a pretty cushy childhood.
Yes, you and I were
incredibly cushy.
You and I were very privileged.
Could my parents buy anything and everything that they want? No, they weren't rich, but like.
But you were sheltered. I was sheltered.
Yes, sheltered, and growing up in Plattsburgh, it's a different bubble, man.
Yeah, man. So here I am.
I took you off your story. Sorry, but
it's all good, man.
Yeah.
It's all good. We're having a conversation.
South End.
I was 22, 23 at the time, and learning on the fly. So we were a small little league. So we didn't really have enough kids in our little league to just play each other. We had 3 teams in the major division, which is 10 through 12 years old.
Okay.
So we had games scheduled, like, out of league, like we were scheduled to play Burnox Westerlo, which, whoever's familiar with the Albany County area, Bern is extremely rural.
Okay.
And predominantly white.
Yep.
The south end of Albany is extremely urban, predominantly black. So, here I am, as a white man coaching these young black youth.
Yep.
And we drove up in a bus to Burnox Westerlo. And, to be honest, man, like the entire game, you just feel a little bit of tension in the air.
You can't explain it, but it's there.
You can't explain it until you're in that other dugout. And you're playing the same game, but the rules are a little bit different.
Interesting.
And we lost in a questionable, I emphasize questionable, officiated game. Like, it was really, really
interesting.
It was poorly officiated.
And it was in Bern.
To say the least. It was in Bern. Okay. Our kids were crushed. They were pissed off. And let me tell you something, man. These were 11 and 12-year-olds, but these were big kids, man. Like, I'm 6 feet tall. Like, we had this kid, Mohammed Banks. He was 5'11" as a 12-year-old.
Wow.
Darius Dixon was like 5'9" and filled out. He was a big kid, man. He was our first baseman. But, so our kids are mad. They're frustrated. It was a bad game. Like the umps just did a bad job. So we're driving back, and we had this kid, Najee Jones, and Najee had by far the toughest home life out of any kid I've ever coached.
Yeah.
He didn't have parents that were around. He bounced around from home to home. Both of his parents were drug addicts.
Wow.
Never showed up to a game.
His parents never did.
His parents never showed up to a game. He lived with another kid on the team. And, so he had it tough, man, but I always had a soft spot for Najee. And we were in the bus. Najee starts rapping, making fun of this other kid, Isaiah, because Isaiah was crying. And it's just chaos. And we're driving. It's me and Joe in the front. And
Joe Varno.
Yeah, Joe Varno.
Yep.
And we're on a 55-mile-an-hour road. And all of a sudden, a fist fight breaks out between because Najee kind of got, he got everybody going. And Isaiah started fighting Darius. As I mentioned, Darius is a big kid. And so Joe pulls over, and I get out. And this is where you really, I really want to emphasize the difference in growing up playing for Voorheesville compared to Albany. Because in Voorheesville, and, listen, man, I know it's important to be politically correct. I know that you have to be really careful with what you say and do these days. But so in Voorheesville, you can't say a curse word in front of kids, or you're getting reported. You're gonna get in trouble. Yeah, by the parents. The parents are gonna find out. You can't do that. Let alone put your hands on a kid. Yeah. Whether it's for disciplinary reasons. In Albany, it's way different, man. Like, the parents, they're a lot looser with their kids, man. You hear F-bombs all the time. Wow. At a T-ball game. Wow. Yeah, these kids are 5. And so that being said, man, you have to be firm and stern with these young people. Otherwise, you won't get through. So the fight breaks out, and Varno had always told me that you have to be fearless. You can't show any signs of weakness. That's chum in the water, man. So, I grab Darius off of Isaiah. I grab him by the shirt, and I these kids were punching each other. I got an elbow in the eye. I got a black eye. Wow. Yeah. So anyways, I know it's kind of a long story, but I just want to emphasize the difference. Like, if you don't rip Darius off of Isaiah's going to the hospital. Yeah. You got to do something, man. You're not in a school system where there's, a principal or an administrator that comes and handles the discipline. No, you're on an island. And if you don't do something about it, so it's not like I, was.
You didn't come in and save the day. It's the reality of them and their lives.
Yeah,
and,
man.
And the
It's
situation
just,
that they were born into.
it's just sad. But my point is that if I didn't expose myself to that, I never would have known. I never would have grown. And
Yeah.
I
I
just
see where you're going. This is a classic example of what we were talking about in your ability to grow. You talked about not plateauing, and this is, I assume, an incredible example for you in your personal life in your self-discovery of
man,
who you are, how you want to live your life, and how you can get better at connecting with people.
Yeah, man. It really is all about people and
Stepped out of your comfort zone for sure.
yeah, man. Listen, like respect is everything in this world and it's earned. Like if you want to be successful in business or just in life in general, man, you have to prove yourself. And I think just, respect is it's very very much, valued in this world. It's important to to have to gain people's respect. And
I 100% agree with that. But I also like the point you said. What was it? What was it? You don't know the commonalities you have with someone
you don't
unless
know what,
you ask.
You don't know what you have in common with somebody if you don't ask. So,
that's a life lesson.
Yeah, man.
It sounds simple, but that is.
It's very simple. It's very
gold.
simple.
That's a gold little sentence. Just put in your memory bank and think about it when you're uncomfortable about talking to somebody.
It's as simple as the air we breathe, man. And I think it's just important for people to get out of their comfort zones. And I don't know. I think that we have a tendency, just as a society to take the straightest line from A to B.
Yeah.
That's not life, man. Life is a zigzag path.
Yeah.
And you have to be prepared for everything, man. You have to be prepared to be vulnerable to growing pains suck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's not easy, and I don't know, you just have to be malleable. I think that's important. You have to be malleable.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be willing to listen to the people around you who will help shape and mold you into what you're supposed to become. And you have to trust your path. And mine was very unconventional, but it was necessary.
Yeah.
It was necessary for me to become who I am today. And I take a lot of pride in that, man. Like I don't get paid to work with these young people. I coached at that little league for 4 summers, and it's driving the kids to practice and games every day. And I don't get paid to do it.
Yeah.
I do it because I love to do it. I do it because those kids changed my life and opened up my eyes.
Yeah.
I don't know what I did for them.
Yeah.
But, maybe down the road, I'll find out. But like right now, I have this young man who I've known since he was 11 years old.
That's
crazy. He was on my first team that I coached. Now he's 18, and he's a senior at Albany High School. He's embarking on a college career, and he's a phenomenal basketball player. And he's a good friend of mine. I look at him like a little brother, man. His name's Mike Alamo Benitez, and Mike actually asked me to write his college recommendation letter recently. Wow. And I'll never forget, man. Mike comes from a great family. His mom works really hard. She's a sweetheart, man. And his uncle is a big part of his life. Hector, great people, great family. But when Mike was 11, I taught Mike how to pitch. I would stay after practice and play catch with him and stuff. And his mom was the only parent to thank me after the season. She sent me a text I'll never forget. It said something along the lines of, thank you for being there for my son. And now Mike talks about college because Coach Jay went to college.
Wow. And
flash forward 7 years, I'm writing Mike's college recommendation letter.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's a great example of how just generally connecting with people, you don't know the impact you'll have on somebody, and you don't know that the impact that somebody will have on you.
Yeah, man.
But
listen, it's symbiotic.
The lesson is to you're better off going for the net positive of the uncomfortable interaction or the uncomfortable circumstance that brings you together, maybe, but
yeah,
taking advantage of the opportunity to connect with somebody.
Yeah,
especially if they're
man.
not in your bubble.
I think exactly. But I want to emphasize that it is symbiotic. It's a two-way street, man, and it's something I'm proud of. But I think back to the whole respect thing. I think that people, and especially children, can recognize real. They see right through bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they knew that I wasn't getting paid to do that. The parents knew. That goes a long way, man. Like, I know a lot of people out there are, ambitious and looking to stack their resume sky high. And that's great, man. But at the same time, there's also a lot of affectation. That's one of my favorite words, man, affectation. It's basically behavior that's designed to impress and is just like surface level. And I think that doing something because you love to do it, not because it's a job, not because you get paid to do it, but just strictly for the passion, I think that goes that goes a long way, man.
That's a growth opportunity.
Yeah. So you have to be willing to do something just for the love of doing it, not just to stack, not just to put it on a resume. People can tell when you're being real or when you're just doing something for yourself, just to better yourself.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of, it's just compassion in general with people. It's great to share, man. Just you have to have zeal, and I don't know. I'm kind of rambling, but
no, that's great. I think that's all relevant to this conversation, and I think for me, it's a good pause for reflection to just think to myself about some of these concepts and just, how am I trying to add, more to my life in that way versus just kind of going through the motions.
Yeah. Listen, I just want to stop you right there because you posed a question. I think that's the single most important thing you can do in this world, man. Just question things. Don't just do them because they've always been done that way.
Yep.
Like, pose questions like why are we forced as children to sit in a classroom for 7 hours and listen? Like, we're not all auditory learners. Come on. Like, why do we do it? Because it's easy. Why do we have a job? Like is it, like we have to question our own impetus sometimes. And I don't know, man. I struggle right now, not with my identity, but with, pertaining to just survival in general. Like, I want to work hard, work ethic is important,
Right.
but at the same time, like, time has become more valuable to me than anything. Like, money is important to just survive, but it's not at the top of my list. So I question things, man. I question, is work something, is it that important to do something that you love, to get paid to do something that you love? Because I don't think it is. I think a job is just something to pay the bills. Do something that you're really good at, and strive to be the best at it. I think Abraham Lincoln said, "Whatever you are, be a good one."
Yep.
And yeah, man, I just struggle with that. Like, so, but again, I'm kind of going off on a tangent. It's important to question things in society.
Yeah. It's really about reflection and mindfulness, I think. I think it's about, taking time for yourself and valuing that reflection process and giving time in your day for true self-reflection, expression.
Yeah.
So, I think I have a long way to go to get better at that. I definitely fall victim to
Listen,
the
man,
mobile
we all
device
do.
and
We
all
all
that.
do.
But
It's
I know
about-
that you have taken a lot of active steps to not succumb to that to the best of your ability, and you've done a lot of reading, and you've done a lot of self-exploration and discovery, and like, I admire that a lot. Could you talk a little bit about that transition in your life when you started getting into that? And
for sure, man. I think as I've gotten older, I think we all get more aware, but I think that I'm acutely aware every single day, almost to a fault. But I'll put it to you this way, man. As far as like, technology and our devices, I think that they've absolutely become vices in our lives. And
explain that.
A perfect example is, okay, next time you drive home from work, I want you to be aware, obviously, of the road in front of you. But if you're on the highway, man, I do this all the time. I'll be driving and I'll see somebody fly by me going like 80, and they're looking down at their phones, man. And
wow.
I think that, like, that's just messed up, because like in a split second your life can change, whether it's in an accident or whatever. But like I've always had the awareness, like, that, like, that's messed up. I bet half of the cars that drive by you, people are looking down at their phones. I mean, these things are on our laps as if they were newborn babies. We treat our phones like they're our kids.
Yeah.
And, we're just aimlessly and, so unaware, like, of our habits, our everyday habits, that it's just ingrained, it's wired into our mind, man. And like, way back when, I just saw the writing on the wall. I think it was my sophomore year in college. I deleted my Facebook, which was big at the time, and this was before Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. And obviously I know about all of these things, but I've never had them. I don't have any social media today.
Interesting. Yeah.
I prefer to exist in the real world, not the one that's happening right now, because I just don't think that it's, again, it goes back to affectation, man. We're all just not, I shouldn't generalize. A lot of us tend to want to take pictures of an experience and post it. And I just don't think that that's real, man. I think that we're doing it for a spectacle. And me, I just prefer to reside in my own atmosphere. I don't need to overlap with anybody else. I don't need to see what anybody else is doing. I don't care what anybody else is doing, because I just, like, my own mind is enough to worry about, man. And I mean, I'm not saying I'm perfect. No one's perfect. You know, I like music, so I like Apple Music and listening on my phone. But as far as my phone being a vice and, that sort of things of that nature, like, I don't succumb to what I see a lot of people doing. And I'm pretty proud of that. I just think we need to be aware, man. If you're texting and driving, just like open up your eyes, just see, like, realize what you're doing. Like, in a split second, your life can change if you look down and take your eyes off the road. And I think that relates to life. Like, if you're looking in your, looking in the past or looking too far in the future, man, you lose track of where you are. And it's important to be transfixed on the moment. And that goes back to mindfulness and awareness.
And I think mindfulness and awareness helps you be more authentic to yourself when you are trying to connect with someone, right? Because that's what we're talking about here today. All these things that we're taking a deep dive in. It really interesting to me. But at the end of the day, you're great at having an authentic conversation with somebody. And I think I could be wrong, but I think it's because you practice some of these other ways of thinking and reflection, and I think that's really valuable.
There is something else I want to say pertaining to this. It's, I think it's important for people to get quiet.
What do you mean by that?
Man, I mean, not having any stimulation. That means no Netflix, no Facebook, no texting. Keep your phone and all your devices in your house and go on a walk. Just get quiet, man. Like, because that's when the wheels start turning on their own. And I think you learn about yourself, but it also makes you a better listener.
Do you meditate?
I do. I don't do it regularly, but I think meditation is big, but just getting quiet, man, like draining out all of the sound and stimulation, because it makes you a better listener. When you're by yourself,
that's something we don't talk about enough. Hearing versus listening.
Yeah, not only a listener to others, but a listener to yourself. I think going on a walk is invaluable. And I just think that everyone should do it, man. Like, it doesn't take much time. Like, we kill time every day. Like, and we just don't see it. Like, I'm not saying you have to be perfect and be productive at every second of every day. Just take 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Just take 15 minutes out of your day to decompress, go on a walk, and just be quiet. Like, just listen, man. Listen to nature. Listen to the trees, the wind. It'll help you be a better listener to others, I think. I think that's the most important skill you can have if you're trying to connect. Don't respond or don't listen with the intent to respond. Listen with the intent to understand. I didn't come up with that. I've heard that before, but that's huge, man. These devices are definitely affecting that, as well as sucking the individuality out of all of us. Because if you think about Twitter, I mean, you can't ignore it. Like, it's everywhere. It's on,
they're using it.
It's on ESPN. Yeah. It's on the news. It's on CNN. Like
Elections.
it is. Listen,
election
man,
questions are
yeah,
coming in from Twitter,
listen,
and
it is a feeding ground
Mm.
for negativity to spread, and it brings out the worst in us. It really does, man.
You really think so?
I think so, man.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there are no benefits to it. When social media and technology are used as a tool, it's great, man. Like,
Net positive.
yeah. Like, I just don't know if we're responsible enough as a society, because I just see it spreading negativity, and anyone can speak their mind hiding behind the keys of a keyboard.
Yeah.
But very few people can stand up to a microphone and speak in front of 100 people.
Yeah.
You know, when
Yeah.
all eyes are on them. Hey, speak your mind, man. I just think that it's too easy. We've made it too easy to hide.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. If you're going to speak your mind, like, step up and just say what's on your mind. Be honest. Like, I think that Twitter and all that stuff makes it too easy to be harsh. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's my opinion, man.
It certainly makes it more difficult.
I stay away from that stuff.
Yeah, it certainly makes it more difficult to be
real.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to say it. Yeah. You do. I'm going to pivot a little bit. You're always telling me about different books that you read and your favorite authors,
Mm-hmm.
poems,
Yeah.
literature. What is, as it pertains to self-expression and bettering yourself in the context of feeling comfortable to connecting with others and maybe just understanding the world, is kind of a very broad question that I'm framing here, but like, what is a book that you would recommend to listeners that, or an author maybe
Okay.
that you has changed the way you see the world, and as it pertains to this whole conversation, I guess.
Okay.
I put you on the spot there a little bit.
Well,
but-
I'll tell you what my personal favorite piece of literature is, and then but it's a little dense. It's a little, like, it's super old. It's from the 1800s. And then
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
and then
Now I'm interested.
I'll tell you about something that I'd recommend for everybody, for somebody who might not like to read as much,
Sure.
because this stuff is dense. My favorite author is Ralph Waldo Emerson, and my favorite piece of literature in the whole world is his essay on self-reliance.
Interesting.
Yeah, man.
I've never touched that. What is that?
It's all about conformity, and like we discussed earlier, it's about questioning things and just being your own person. It's super dense. It's not long. It's maybe like 10 to 15 pages, but each sentence packs a punch.
Interesting.
Like, you take your time reading it, because
What's it called?
it's called Self-Reliance.
By Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Ralph Waldo Emerson was the father of American transcendentalism. He was really into nature and just thinking for yourself. Whoso be a man must be a nonconformist. His whole idea was to inspire people to think for themselves and not do something because that's the societal expectation. He was just a really, really awesome guy who spread positivity, and he's one of the most brilliant American minds of all time. But that was written in the mid 1800s, so it's a little outdated. It's hard to read, but I don't know, it resonated with me.
Yeah.
If I were to recommend something besides that, there's a book called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And basically that inspired me to stay on my path. And I just think it
The Alchemist. So what is the basis for calling it The Alchemist? I have a guess, but I'd be interested. What is this book really about?
basically that, alchemy is the science of turning stuff into gold.
Okay.
And I think that, metaphorically speaking, anyone can do anything, but each of us are appointed with a very specific mission, and you really do have to listen to yourself and trust that the dots connect. And
Interesting.
yeah, man, you have to be willing. I forgot to say this earlier.
Is it a big book?
No, it's about 180 pages, I think, somewhere in that ballpark.
Okay.
But
it's relatively like within the last 50 years, a century.
Oh yeah, I think it's
pretty new, or
20 years old.
Oh wow,
I don't know.
And it's like a
Don't quote me on that.
Self-development book.
Yeah, for sure, man. But I meant to say this earlier. I think there is a lot of power in saying no to things. In The Alchemist. Now, it's kind of a spoiler alert.
Sure.
So basically, not to give too much away, but this young man is on this mission to find treasure.
Okay.
And he was told from a higher power that, he had a specific mission, and he falls in love, and basically that that person that he falls in love with lets him continue on his path. So he could have settled down with that person, but he said no because he realized what he had to do to become who he was supposed to be. I think the power of saying no to things is so important. If you're going to set out to do anything in this world, you have to be willing to say no to the little things, man. You have to be willing to say no to something good to accomplish something great.
Yeah.
So, like, I know that sounds kind of cliche and a little bit, cheesy.
No. I mean, it's about like focusing your energy on the smaller percentage of things that have the highest return on investment.
Listen, man, if you're out to, if you set out to write a book, to, become, the owner of a business, like, you have to say, that means you're going to have to say no to going out to dinner with friends.
Yeah.
Grabbing drinks with a buddy after work. You have to say no to those things, man. Because if you say no to 100 of those things, you'll accomplish what you want.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Gary V has obviously a lot of podcast listeners know Gary V, but he always preaches.
I've never met him.
Me either. He his vibe's interesting. I feel like sometimes he comes across as a little harsh. Yeah. But I feel like that's why people love him.
Yeah, man, and that's not my style. But
he talks about, my point in bringing him up is he talks about the concept of sort of like minimalism, right?
For sure, man.
Like his whenever he gets a question from an entrepreneur who's like, man, I can't figure out how to scale my business, or I can't figure out how to like build it beyond this. I'm plateauing. Yeah. And he said, well, what's your paycheck? And they're all saying, 6 figures or whatever. And he's like, well, maybe you need to learn how to put more of that back into your passion. For sure, what it is what you're trying to succeed with, and learn to live with less. He's not saying, don't take care of your family, don't take care of the things you need, but like he said, he says this all the time. We allow ourselves to get too focused on consuming rather than living minimalistly.
Well,
that's not a right word. You know,
listen, man.
but like I think there's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah, well, that's capitalism at its finest. Consumerism.
Yeah.
It's a lot of us have Cadillac taste on a Chevrolet budget.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
I think it's about being efficient. If you set a goal, just be efficient and don't procrastinate. Like I know that like it's so much easier said than done, but I think it's right up there with public speaking, man. It's something we all have in common. We all procrastinate, but you know, just say no, learn to say no to things and get it done, man. You know, if you set a goal, stick to it. Hold yourself to it.
I agree with that. I agree with setting goals, holding yourself accountable, you know, writing goals down. I think is like a little thing that I've started doing that is huge. I mean, if you actually just write it down, it's amazing what happens when you just write something down.
Yeah, for sure, man. I concur.
I want to pivot here. We're getting. This has been a great conversation. There's a question that I plan to ask most, if not every, guest I have on Stories of Gumption here, and it's kind of an interesting question because there's a lot you can learn from the answer. But I want to paint a scenario. We have the opportunity to hire 3 board of directors for you.
Yep.
These board of directors are responsible for your life,
Okay.
giving you coaching and mentorship. They can be anybody, celebrities, dead or alive, family member, someone of significance. But what I want to know from you is, of anybody, if you had to pick your top 3 board of directors,
Wow,
dead or alive, to coach you through your life.
as like a spiritual guide, if you will.
Spiritual guide, financial guide, business guide. Like, these are the 3 people that together are going to coach you.
Like a life coaching staff.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's your board of directors.
Okay.
For you. Who are they?
Well,
and why?
okay. Geez, man, that's a tough one. You're putting me on the spot. I guess I would have to say the first person that comes to mind I mentioned earlier, who's like I hold in very high regards. My favorite author, poet, Ralph Waldo Emerson. As I mentioned, he's just a brilliant mind, and someone who I know for a fact. I mean, obviously, you know, he died. He's no longer with us.
Right.
But he would definitely challenge me to. He would pose great questions for me to think for myself.
Yeah.
He wouldn't tell me to do anything, but he would get the wheels turning, and he's just a philosopher, man. His writing is inspiring, and I would have loved to meet him, and yeah, he'd be number 1 probably on my list because
Nice.
he's just a brilliant mind.
It's a great choice.
Number 2, geez, man, you know, I've always been a basketball fan, but I'm able to recognize this guy's work outside of basketball, off the court, and I respect the hell out of him. LeBron James, believe it or not. I mean,
Yeah.
arguably the greatest basketball player of all time, but he's also done more than any player has off the court. He just opened up a school for underserved youth in Ohio, in Akron, Ohio, which is like a really tough place to grow up. It's where he grew up.
Yep.
And
Yep.
he's all about just, you know, equal opportunity, and he stands for something, man. He's similar to Muhammad Ali. not as poetic, but he brought up, 3 of his best friends growing up are now on his team of like advisors, but he didn't just bring them along. Like, these guys have their own enterprises. Rich Paul is an agent. He has his own sports agency. And I don't know if I can remember the names of the other 2 guys. But anyways, that's not relevant.
LeBron James, though.
LeBron James is an inspiration to all of us, where he's come from and where he is now and what he does for our youth.
I like
That's
it.
number 2, man. Number 3. Now this is a really tough one, but I would have to say it's a toss up, and 3 people come to mind. I know we're limiting this to 3, but I just want to throw these 3 names out there.
Sure.
My Uncle Martin.
Okay.
Who is one of the most level-headed people that I know. He doesn't make emotional decisions. He's just a wise guy.
Yep.
And he's always been a mentor to me, and I just have always respected him like crazy. He's actually, I mentioned my Aunt Jen earlier, who's a teacher at the charter school in Albany. That's her husband, my Uncle Martin. My buddy Anthony, who is like my spirit, I always refer to him as my spiritual guide. He poses great questions for me. He's the type of guy you sit down with and you don't know anything about him when the conversation is over, but you've learned a lot about yourself because he's just great at facilitating that and getting the wheels turning for yourself. But again,
sounds like a great guy. I think I've met him a couple times.
I have a lot of respect for him. He's just a chill dude. One of the most laid back guys, but again, just a wise person. And then the third person is Heather Garvey. She was a teacher of mine in high school and a mentor. She wrote my college recommendation letter. She's now the dean of students at Voorheesville High School. And shout out to her. That's my girl. She has 2 sons, and happily married, and it's just a great family. But Mrs. Garvey is like a superhero to me. She she's super ambitious, great sense of humor. Again, very level-headed. I emphasize level-headed because you can't make emotional decisions. You can't have somebody that's advising you getting super emotional. Yeah. But Mrs. Garvey is on top of her shit. Mm-hmm. And she has my back no matter what. And man, I have great revere for all 3 of those people. I don't know which one I would pick for my list, but those are 3 people that I'm very, very close to that I would trust with my life.
That's
I know
awesome.
That's kind of that's more than 3.
That's fine. That's fine.
5 people.
That's no, that's great. Well, I've been thrilled to have you on the podcast, Jay. The first one ever. This has been great. This has been a really good conversation.
Equally as honored.
Yeah, I mean, just to have, we sort of talked about this overarching theme of your ability to connect with people, but there's a reason you've been able to do that so well, and I'm glad we've been able to talk about some of the philosophy that you have around that, around the world, because I think that is the key ingredient to why you've grown so much from when we first met in college. I'm overcome fears. And I think that's a lesson that a lot of people can walk away with today. Yeah.
Listen, I'm comfortable in my own skin, man. I'm happy with where I am and who I am. I have no complaints. The one thing that I do want to share with the listeners before we part.
Sure.
I think there's a great there's a sense of humility that that comes along with connecting with people. You have to be able to put your ego aside, be open-minded. You have to be a good listener. I think that children do it best. And I think that when we grow up and become, so-called adults, we lose sight a little bit. Bills, we have to pay our bills and they're at the top of our list. But man, just approach life with a youthful exuberance. Be willing to listen and learn throughout the course of your life. Don't ever think that like adults are way up here and children are down here, naive.
Yeah.
Because children can teach us a lot, man. Like they really can. Like they think everything is amazing, and it is.
Yeah.
Like it's all about how you look at things. So just, live life with a youthful energy and exuberance.
Sounds simple, but that's a good takeaway message.
For sure, man.
You read for me a while back a poem that I feel like really captures this conversation. And you mentioned you might have brought it with you today.
Yes, I do have it somewhere here in my notes.
Okay.
Let's see.
What I would love to do, I think, just as a way to close out first episode ever of Stories of Gumption podcast, and just to send and wrap up this conversation, I would love to give you the opportunity to close us out with that poem, if you have it. And,
yep, I do, man. Let's do it.
I know it's about a 3-minute poem, so listeners, buckle up. This is a great poem. I love it, and I think it really captures our conversation from today. But Jay, I'll let you introduce it, tell a story about it, and then perform it for us to close us out.
This is spoken word, baby. So buckle up. I've read this at open mic night, but it's one that I hold very close to my heart because it just reminds me to think. And it's about a very important conversation that I had with a very comfortable but average chair.
A chair.
Yes. And
I like it.
Purposely decided not to give it a title because I think that it may be different for everyone. So it's untitled. So here we go. Is this it? Is this really where I'm supposed to sit? I thought for a while. For almost too long. When does comfortable become too comfortable? I guess it's when you sit in the same place for so long, looking out the window, watching the leaves grow and change while you don't. And eventually you lose the desire to use your legs anymore. Kind of like a chair. I'll always remember you sitting there, dreaming of what we could become, collecting dust in the afternoon sun. Staring at the doorknob, the glare from the window catches my eye. Barely open, I'll never forgive myself if I don't try to slip through the crack. I have to leave before it slams shut. I see too much potential out there not to get out and experience life on the other side, where the grass is greener than the carpet beneath you, and the fall breeze beats the ceiling fan above you, which has been spinning in place for so long, chair. But it's not going anywhere. I guess I can relate. My feet were falling asleep, making it harder and harder to stand, day after day with a blank stare and an empty hand taking a nap on your armrest. Quite the trap. So perhaps I'll keep it short. It's been real stagnant. At the end of the day, your cushion becomes a comfort zone for complacency, making it so easy to settle and sit down, easy to conform and become lost and never found. Just like all that change that could have been, that unfinished to-do list written in pen, too often they fall victim to your cushion. But I can only sit for so long, chair. This world just has too much to offer besides a 9-to-5 job, a house with a pool, a 2-car garage, a wife, the well and good life, the American facade. You see, a straight line from A to B is too short for me. I prefer the zigzag path to everywhere, where my only job is to connect the dots wherever I go, always ascending, I'll never plateau on the other side. Call me a crazy boy, but I'm not a lazy boy like you are. Then again, I could just grow old with you, always doing what I was told to do, sitting in my 40s telling stories to these kids about chasing their dreams, pretending like I know what that means, while wishing that I ran faster after mine. My feet would grow roots, coming home from work planted in the same chair, kicking off the same old boots. You've tried to convince me that there's always tomorrow. I guess I've been killing time. My biggest fear is that you're the accomplice, supporting me yet holding me back from everything I'm trying to accomplish, and you have been, for so long, Chair. I think I need some fresh air. Even if that means leaving my house, quitting my job, getting off of my couch, and out of my comfort zone. I had to ask myself, am I living here or just spending the nights? That's when I decided you just weren't my type. Don't get me wrong, I think you're really nice, but after a while that smile will fade, and the window will close and so will the shades. No matter how safe and comfortable it may be, I can't grow in a dark room. I need cultivation. I need the sun and water, preferably a lake. Turns out a living room is the furthest thing from living. So while the window is still open, I think I'll stand, reach out my hand for the doorknob, but not before I take one look back and say, so long, Chair. I would feel bad, except you've got legs, but choose not to use them. At least the ceiling fan attempts to move. Anyway, I know where you'll be at the end of the day. Average is always something to fall back on.